All right, here we are talking about Chapter 4, Launch of Make by Pieter Levels. And this chapter was an interesting one. It covered a lot of things that I had never thought of, never heard of. This chapter acts as a playbook for anyone looking to launch their product, to actually have it go to market for the first time. And a product launch is important because it's the one time where you can get users really excited about your project. And this chapter has quite a few details. There's a lot of comparisons between platforms. So I'm going to do my best to summarize all of them, and you can let me know how I did in the comments. In terms of key takeaways, the first one is you absolutely need to prepare. Pieter gives 5 pieces of advice here. 1, you need to fix most bugs. I mean, people are going to see your app for the first time, so you want to make sure your website is actually functioning well. Number 2 is to add an email sign-up box. Now, this isn't supposed to be a newsletter. This is supposed to be a way for your users to actually interact with your product. So in the example of a job board, you would subscribe and get targeted, specific job recommendations. So this is not just a newsletter blast. Number 3, push notifications actually go directly to your user's phone, which is probably the place they're most likely to see it. And he says you don't want to overdo it, or people are going to just uninstall your app. Number 4 is set up analytics. Analytics are the best way for you to understand how your users are using your website, and they're fairly easy to set up. It'll explain where the traffic is actually coming from, and that can make a huge difference as you do updates later to your website. And then finally, Pieter recommends that you add a feedback box. The feedback box is basically, if something breaks, this feature will help you find out very quickly so you can fix bugs as they happen. Key takeaway number 2 is you want to tailor your message for each platform. Now, this is the part of the chapter that had a ton of detail, so I'm going to do my best to summarize. The 3 best platforms are Product Hunt, Hacker News, and Reddit. He mentioned a couple others, but those are the 3 I'm going to stick with. Product Hunt is generally very supportive and very optimistic. They get really excited. They do have some spam protection, but if you want to do well on Product Hunt, he says your tagline really matters. It's important that you don't get overly technical and you don't want to be too spammy. The second platform he mentions is Hacker News. Hacker News is really about radical honesty, and it also has a lot of spam protection, and it has many submissions, so it can be very, very competitive. To do well on Hacker News, he recommends being personal and authentic because the folks on Hacker News are much more skeptical of PR language. So you don't want to sound like you're marketing too much. You want to put out your idea as authentically as you possibly can. Then third, he talks about Reddit, and he says Reddit can generate a ton of traffic because it has a lot of overlap with the mainstream. And if you do well, you can actually get tons of traffic to your app. However, Reddit is also more of a hive mind. So if some of the first people to see your post happen to really like it, then your post is going to do better. If not, then it might disappear very, very quickly. And then he also mentions that because Reddit is so big, if your post happens to do well, you need to make sure your website is ready to handle the huge influx of traffic. All right, now aside from launching on platforms, something else a lot of startup founders like to do is they like to get press for their product. To get press, you don't want to spam thousands of journalists. That's really annoying, and Pieter says that is something you should avoid doing at all costs. Instead, a better approach is to find the right journalist and tailor your message specifically for them. First, you want to find someone who would genuinely be interested in your app, someone who writes about apps like yours anyways. And you want to craft an email for them that is concise and very personal. Avoid the buzzwords. And if they respond, you want to be very conscientious and respond quickly and answer their questions. Basically, you want to make their job easy for them. You don't want them to need to investigate too much, and you want them to feel motivated to actually write about your product. Fourth, be organic and be nice. Pieter actually mentions this quite a few times throughout the chapter. You don't want to brag, you don't want to ask for likes and shares and posts, and you shouldn't buy updates. You want your traffic to be organic so that you can actually get feedback on whether people like it or not. You can't force your app to go big if people just don't like it. So he stresses that you need to be thoughtful when launching your app. You don't want to be spammy. You want to be providing actual value. And finally, the advice that I thought was most interesting in this chapter is you don't launch once. Your product, it's not like it's out there and then it's good to go. You should be launching continuously. So that means Every time you have a big new feature, you should have another launch. Or if you do like a website redesign, version 2.0 of your app, each of those should be a launch in itself. So those are the key takeaways for Chapter 4, Launch. I will see you tomorrow for Chapter 5, which is called Grow, and I can't wait to see you there.